It was a moonless night, the clock struck 10, and the air inside the mental hospital was thick with an unsettling silence. A nurse named Rachna, with her heart pounding like a drum, made her rounds through the dimly lit corridors. As she approached room number 11, an icy draft whispered through the hall, sending a shiver down her spine. She hesitated, her hand hovering over the doorknob, a sense of dread clawing at her insides. With a deep breath, she slowly pushed the door open. The room was cloaked in shadows, and there, in the far corner, a strikingly beautiful 27-year-old woman sat transfixed, her gaze locked onto the wall as if it held the secrets of the universe. Rachna's heart raced as she noticed the girl was murmuring softly, her lips moving but not a sound escaping. An eerie chill gripped Rachna, causing her feet to feel rooted in place, her instincts urging her to flee, yet drawn by a morbid curiosity. Just as she gathered the courage to step inside, the girl erupted into a fit of manic laughter, a sound so jarring it echoed through the sterile room. Her head twisted unnaturally, eyes wide and unblinking, fixing Rachna with a gaze that pierced through the veil of sanity. The nurse's breath quickened, and a cold sweat broke out on her brow as she stumbled backward, slamming the door shut behind her, the sound reverberating in the stillness like a gunshot. "Sunita! Sunita!" she cried, racing towards the reception area with dread nipping at her heels. Sunita, calm and collected at the desk, spoke into the phone with a soothing voice. "Auntie, please don't worry. She's absolutely fine. We're taking wonderful care of her." After hanging up, she looked at Rachna, concern etched on her face. "What's wrong, Rachna? You look like you've seen a ghost." Breathless and trembling, Rachna recounted the chilling encounter. Sunita's expression shifted from concern to intrigue as she listened. "And who were you speaking to?" Rachna inquired, a frown knitting her brow. "Oh, that girl in room 11. It was her mother. Poor woman calls every night desperate for news. They admitted her just a few months ago." "But what happened to her?" Rachna pressed, her curiosity piqued. Sunita's eyes darkened as she replied, "She is caught in a web of despair, my dear. Her beauty hides a tragic tale. She could end up like this for only two reasons: an unrequited love that shattered her heart, or a spirit that has taken hold of her very soul." Shock coursed through Rachna as she gasped, "What do you mean?" Sunita paused, her voice low and grave. "Unfortunately, both reasons intertwine in her story. Let me tell you about Naina." Naina, now 27 and a final-year engineering student, was the embodiment of beauty, a radiant light amidst the darkness that surrounded her. Boys flocked to her like moths to a flame, but within her heart, she nurtured a dream that no one could fulfill. Each night, she conjured images of her prince, a fantasy woven with threads of hope and longing. Yet the line between her dreams and reality blurred, leaving a void that echoed in the silence of her mind. Her laughter, once a melody, now became a haunting refrain, echoing off the walls as she spoke to herself, lost in a world that no one else could enter. Her parents, seeing their daughter slip further into this abyss, felt a gnawing fear, worry etched into their faces as they pondered the fate of their beloved child. And so the story of Naina unfolds, a tale of beauty marred by tragedy, a dance with shadows that beckon as the chilling winds of the night whisper her name. In the shadowy corners of their college, where dreams and unspoken desires intertwined, two young men harbored a secret longing for Naina, a beauty so captivating that she seemed to dance on the edge of reality. Ishan and Jatin, both entranced by her, had yet to reveal their feelings, each caught in a silent battle within their hearts. On a day like any other, Naina found solace in the college library, lost in the world of her diary, pouring her thoughts and dreams onto the pages. Suddenly her phone rang, slicing through the tranquility. It was her mother, and in her rush to answer, she left behind her diary, an innocent mistake that would soon spiral into a web of complications. As if drawn by fate, Jatin, noticing the unattended diary, snatched it up in a heartbeat. Glancing around to ensure no one was watching, he stuffed it into his bag, a spark of mischief igniting within him. Once he returned home, the dim light of his room illuminated his face as he delved into the secrets penned by Naina. With every turn of the page, his expression shifted from curiosity to something darker, a crease forming on his forehead as he absorbed her innermost thoughts and feelings. It was around 1 a.m. when he finally set the diary aside, a crooked smile curling his lips as if he had unearthed a treasure of forbidden knowledge. Meanwhile, in her own room, the light glowed softly, but Nina was engulfed in despair. Her sanctuary lay in chaos as she tore through her belongings, searching frantically for the diary that held the essence of her soul. The noise roused her mother from sleep, who approached hesitantly and knocked on the door. "Nina, are you okay?" she called out, but the silence that followed was deafening. "Nina, dear, are you all right?" Her mother pressed again, concern lacing her voice. "I'm fine, Mum," Nina replied, although the tremble in her voice betrayed her. "It's late. You should get some rest," her mother said, retreating to her slumber. Alone in her room, Nina felt a wave of sadness wash over her. It was as if she had lost a piece of herself, the diary a vessel for her dreams and fears. She wiped her tears away and tried to find solace in sleep, but rest eluded her as she wrestled with her turmoil. The dawn brought with it a heavy heart as Nina arrived at college, the weight of her loss evident in her demeanor. Nisha, her friend, noticed the shift and inquired, "What's wrong, Nina? You look so upset." "My diary, Nisha." "It's missing." "I can't find it anywhere." Nina lamented, her voice a mix of frustration and sorrow. Nearby, Ishan stood silently, a storm brewing within him as Jatin approached, an unsettling confidence radiating from him. When Nina saw Jatin, her surprise was palpable. He wore the very clothes she had described in her diary, a chilling coincidence that sent shivers down her spine. As their eyes met, an unexpected attraction flickered to life within her, juxtaposed with the grief of her lost diary. It was a bittersweet moment, one that felt like a cruel twist of fate. Jatin, emboldened by the connection he felt through her words, seized the moment and approached her with purpose. "Nina," he began, the air thick with anticipation, "I want to be with you." Caught off guard, yet inexplicably drawn to him, Nina found herself nodding, the words slipping from her lips, "Yes." Joy illuminated Jatin's face, a radiant smile that contrasted sharply with the storm brewing in Ishan's chest. He watched in silence, a heart shattered into fragments, as two souls intertwined before him, oblivious to the anguish that lay just beneath the surface. The day wore on, and with every passing moment, Jatin's charm seemed to grow ever brighter, casting a shadow over Ishan's pain, leaving him to grapple with the echoes of love unspoken and the haunting reality of what could never be. As the shadows stretched longer, the air thickened with tension, and the story of their intertwined fates began to unravel, a tale of love, loss, and the dark secrets that bind them all. The tendrils of Jatin's obsession wrapped tighter around Nina, wrapping her in a suffocating grip that sent shivers down her spine. What began as a simple admiration morphed into a consuming madness, driving Jatin to irrational extremes. He became a dark shadow, lurking in every corner of her life, pushing away anyone who dared to approach her, even Nisha, her closest friend. The tension escalated, and soon it culminated in a violent confrontation between Jatin and Ishan, both battling not just for Nina's heart but for their very sanity. Jatin's descent into madness took a grotesque turn. He began to etch Nina's name into his skin, the crimson stains a twisted testament to his love. He filled her mailbox with letters written in his own blood, each word dripping with a fervor that was both terrifying and enthralling. Nina, once enamored by the idea of love, now found herself enveloped in fear, a creeping dread that shadowed her every step. One fateful day, she found herself at Jatin's house, driven by a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. As she crossed the threshold, her heart raced when her eyes fell upon her diary sprawled across his desk, its pages exposed like secrets laid bare. Stunned, she picked it up, the familiarity of it sending a chill through her. In that moment of shock, her gaze drifted to a drawer, where she unearthed a collection of love letters and pictures of other girls, their smiles frozen in time. Suddenly, the door swung open, and a man in his 40s stepped into the room, startling Nina from her thoughts. "Oh dear, don't be afraid," he said smoothly, his voice warm yet tinged with an unsettling undertone. "My name is Kishore. I'm Jatin's uncle. I come to check on him from Bangalore every week."
"Poor boy has no one else?"
His words hung in the air, heavy with an unspoken sorrow. His parents died in a road accident, and since then it has deeply affected his mind. He's been battling mental illness for quite some time. Naina's heart raced. "Mental illness?" She echoed, disbelief etched across her face. Yes, Kishore confirmed, his expression grave. He believes he must possess every beautiful thing in the world, which is why his home is filled with such antiques. Naina looked around, her breath hitching as she took in the ornate items that surrounded her, each one a reflection of Jatin's twisted perception of beauty. He doesn't understand emotions. Kishore continued, his voice low and somber. He's only attracted to external beauty. If something loses its charm, he simply erases its existence. Naina felt the weight of dread settle in her stomach, each word a nail driving deeper into her mind. Pointing to a photo in the drawer, she asked, "And whose pictures are these?" Kishore sighed. "Those are pictures of Jatin's first girlfriend. I only met her once. Every time I see him, he's with a new girl. But I never asked what happened to them, doctor's orders. Discussing anything that might upset him could provoke his violent tendencies." Naina's heart raced as she scanned the images, each girl stunningly beautiful. But then her eyes fell upon one photo turned upside down. With trembling fingers, she flipped it over, and a gasp escaped her lips. It was her own face staring back at her, her heart plummeting into darkness. Everything began to click into place, and a suffocating terror enveloped her. Unable to bear the weight of what she had discovered, Naina fled home, locking herself in her room, the walls closing in around her. She wanted to scream, but found herself voiceless, trapped in a nightmare of her own making. Just then, her phone buzzed incessantly, Jatin's name flashing across the screen. After 111 rings, she still couldn't bring herself to answer. The thought of facing him was paralyzing. Days morphed into a haze as Naina isolated herself from the world, a ghost haunting her own life. She sat in her room, her diary a cursed object that she now loathed. On that same day, fate dealt a cruel hand. On the front page of the newspaper, a shocking headline screamed at her. A boy had jumped from his building in despair after a love rejection. Jatin's picture leered back at her, his once bright eyes now devoid of life. It felt as if the world had crumbled beneath her, leaving her hollow, every ounce of strength ebbing away. Naina stopped attending college, her days consumed by the haunting presence of Jatin in her mind. She sat in silence, staring at the walls, muttering to herself, "I didn't do anything. Please leave me alone." Yet no matter how hard she tried, the phantom of Jatin's obsession lingered, mocking her from the shadows, feeding on her fear. In that suffocating solitude, Naina felt the world outside fade away, replaced by a relentless echo of laughter, an eerie reminder of the darkness that had seeped into her life, forever altering the course of her dreams. The air was thick with an unsettling tension, the kind that clings to the skin like a cold sweat. Rachna's sister stood frozen, her heart racing as Sunita sister's chilling words echoed in her mind. "Naina, I am still waiting for you today. You are only mine." As the night deepened, the haunting tale of obsession and madness wrapped around her like a suffocating shroud. Suddenly, the lights overhead began to flicker, casting erratic shadows that danced along the walls. The hospital, usually a sanctuary for the weary, transformed into a labyrinth of fear as darkness engulfed it. Then, as if on cue, the power cut out completely, plunging Rachna into an abyss of terror. Panic surged through her veins as she fumbled for her mobile phone, her hands trembling uncontrollably. She switched on the flashlight, the beam cutting through the suffocating darkness. "Sunita sister, are you here?" Her voice trembled, swallowed by the silence that hung like a heavy fog. There was no answer, only the unsettling sound of her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. In that moment of dread, her eyes caught sight of a paper note lying on the table, illuminated by her phone's light. She reached for it, her fingers shaking as she read the hastily scrawled message. "Rachna, I have to leave somewhere far due to an emergency. I couldn't reach you on the phone, so I am leaving this message. I will be back in an hour." As the words sank in, a wave of despair washed over her, as if the very essence of life had been drained from the room. With fearful eyes darting around her, she felt the oppressive weight of her surroundings. Then, in the far corner of the room, something stirred, a dark silhouette that seemed to emerge from the shadows. Rachna's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the figure. It was Jatin's ghost, his presence a grotesque parody of the boy she once knew. A crooked smile twisted on his lips, his eyes glimmering with a madness that chilled her to the bone. "You are quite beautiful too," he said, his voice dripping with a sinister sweetness. "And beautiful things belong to me. The laughter that followed was an unholy sound, echoing off the walls like a twisted symphony, reverberating through Rachna's very bones. It was the laughter of someone who had crossed the boundaries of life and death, a reminder that the line between dreams and reality had been irrevocably blurred. Rachna's mind raced, fear clawing at her insides as she took a step back, her heart pounding in her chest. In that moment, she understood that the horrors they had been telling each other were not mere stories. They were warnings, echoes of a darkness that stalked them, ready to consume anyone drawn into its grip. If you have found yourself gripped by this tale, if the shadows have whispered to you as they have to Rachna, then heed this call. Subscribe to us and step further into the abyss, where every story holds a fragment of truth, and the line between fear and fascination is perilously